Hello, and thank you for joining us as we discuss key considerations for your overall customer experience strategy. My name is Heather Timney, and I am the head of marketing at Satrix Solutions. We're a customer experience and employee engagement consulting firm. With me is Evan Klein. He is the founder and president of Satrix Solutions, and Steve Bernstein, CEO and founder of Waypoint, a software company for voice of customer platforms. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me here. I'm looking forward to an engaging discussion with Evan.
Great.
Yes, thanks, Heather. Thanks, Steve, my very old friend. Really looking forward to the discussion.
Indeed.
All right, let's jump in. Evan, for companies with platforms or apps, in-app and pop-up surveys have become more popular in recent years. What are your thoughts about how valuable that approach is to collecting feedback?
Yeah, well, it definitely has gotten more popular. There are some great companies that offer pretty cool technology where you can gather that feedback, as you said, directly in the application. You know, the first thing I'll say is that we definitely believe in the mantra that all feedback is a gift, right? So anytime you can solicit feedback that's valuable, actionable, and reliable, then absolutely, we certainly advocate doing so. The issue with in-app is that, unfortunately, we see companies using it improperly too often. For example, they rely on it as their main source of feedback, and they derive a key performance indicator like Net Promoter Score based on the feedback or responses to the in-app survey. And unfortunately, the feedback there is just not really truly representative of your customer base. Generally, and I think it's human nature, what you see is folks on either side of the polls who are responding to in-app feedback. In other words, those who are really unhappy or those who are really thrilled. A lot of the folks in the middle are just not going to be bothered. They're working in the application. They see a little pop-up with 11-point scale or something, and they disregard it. But if they're really upset about something or feel like something's frustrating to them, they're more likely to share it. So what you're generally going to get, we believe, is skewed towards the negative. And as long as you recognize that and you accept what you're getting is not necessarily representative of your customer sentiment, then yes, we definitely believe that it's an effective method of soliciting feedback. It's great for product to understand maybe what feature functionality they should accelerate on the roadmap or how they should be thinking about the next release. But don't consider this to be your overriding sort of company level Net Promoter Score or CSAT because It just doesn't reflect all of the potential responses. The other issue is sometimes your decision maker or key stakeholder is not using the application. So you're just missing out on feedback from folks who are not in the platform, and sometimes those are going to be your decision makers. So have to keep these things in mind when using an app. But all that said, it can be a useful tool. What do you think, Steve? You agree?
Yeah, I mean I do agree with everything you said. I would add that the feedback process, right? Your company's process for acquiring representative feedback needs to exemplify the kind of customer experience that you want to provide, right? I mean, imagine like if you're asking for feedback and you do it in a really nasty way, right? It's a total turnoff. So what we see a lot of times is companies implementing in-app feedback, but it's an interruption. It's kind of asking for feedback at the wrong time in the user's workflow. They're just trying to get something done. So to your point, Evan, I mean, looking at, yeah, you kind of get the polls. We've seen that as well, but it's really a measure of the strength of the relationship, right? If the customer, if that contact cares, right, and you're not pissing them off by asking for feedback when they're in the middle of something, then they're gonna participate. But what about all those people that don't care? Like, I don't really have a relationship with these people. Are they, what are they asking? Why are they asking for feedback? But this is annoying, right? So response rate and participation rate becomes super important because, to your point, Evan, right, that representative, trustworthy feedback, super important. So, our Waypoint Top Box product, make sure that we always see response rate or participation rate right next to any scores, right next to all the key drivers, right? You always see how representative is this feedback, both on individual counts of participation, but also financially, right? Are we hearing from the right accounts that are really participating? And are we hearing from the right people in the accounts? It doesn't matter necessarily where that feedback is coming from. If you want to do it in an app, great. Just make sure you avoid the pitfalls and make sure you recognize that it's not enough, right? And that you got to take the measures to make sure it's trustworthy and representative.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something, Steve, around key drivers, and that's another issue I have with most in-app functionality is it only allows for essentially a 2-question survey, right? Oftentimes it's the likely to recommend question, and then there might be an open-end text box for you to solicit verbatim feedback. That's not enough to get you key drivers, right? That's just the tip of the iceberg. And, we're not recommending companies do those sort of laborious 20 or 30 question surveys. Nobody wants to take them anymore anyway, but the 2-question survey is somewhat limiting. So I think in-app most of the time is limiting in that regard as well.
Thank you, Evan and Steve, for bringing your expertise to this thoughtful discussion. If you've listened to all 5 of these questions, you realize there's a lot of moving parts, right, Steve and Evan?
Yeah, right. We do hear a lot, like how complicated it could be. It's just a survey. It's not just a survey. This, doing this stuff right requires a deliberate process to get trustworthy representative feedback that is moving in the right direction, that is changing appropriately. So we have software to help enable that, but coupled with what you guys do, what Evan's been talking about with consulting, super important. Evan?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And I think, working with a number of different companies since our inception in 2009, we've seen a lot of really great things that companies have done and that we've helped them do. And then unfortunately, we've seen companies who have tried it on their own internally and, made mistakes. And so that's one of the areas that, really pains us when we see companies doing things wrong, because ultimately, it has the really significant risk of generating data that's not reliable or trustworthy in any way, or potentially offending the very relationships you were looking to strengthen because you're not doing the the work of actioning the feedback afterwards. So as a consulting firm, these are some of the areas that we work very closely with our clients to ensure that they are adhering to best practices, that we're doing all the right things to maximize the return on investment.
Great, thanks. So to dive deeper into this discussion or to chat more about your program, please feel free to connect with Evan or Steve or myself on LinkedIn, and you can also find more information on our websites. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Evan.